Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Culture Report. I'm Antonia Velez. Weeks after the death of Pope Francis, people across the world are continuing to mourn his loss and celebrate his life. The 266th Pope died at the age of 88 after nearly 12 years of a papacy that strayed from that of his conservative predecessors and characterized him as a humble leader who concerned himself with the marginalized and underprivileged. Since the Pope's passing, many are wondering exactly what the impact of his papacy will be within the Catholic Church. I sat down with Reverend Dr. Amanda Henderson from the Iliff School of Theology to discuss his life and legacy. All right, thank you so much for joining us today. I kind of want to start with the Pope's funeral because we're hearing a lot that it's kind of a mirror to the kind of Pope that he was.
Yeah, in many ways, he died in the ways that he lived, both in his death itself, the ways that he was very public with his illness. There was no secrecy around the last months of his life. That was the first break with tradition around his death, was how he died. And then his funeral was a return to this humility and simplicity that he valued to the core and that he worked to institutionalize throughout the church and in his funeral service by changing both the length, reducing the pomp and circumstance, making sure that it was very open and accessible and there for the people. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's super interesting. And you mentioned breaking from tradition. We also hear over and over that his papacy was pretty much a stark difference from the people who came before him. Could you kind of give us a brief explanation and like some examples of how that or why that was?
Yeah, he was different from the start, being the first Pope selected from the Americas, from south of the equator, from a Jesuit. He was someone who was rooted in the Latin American Catholic tradition of liberation theology and social justice. So all of those things formed him and shaped him, which were different from popes who came from Europe, who were more intellectual. He is more pastoral and more focused on the poor, and his beginnings in Latin America really formed him.
Going to that last point that you mentioned, him being a Jesuit and from like a Latin American country, how might that have influenced his outspokenness about oppressed groups and immigration?
Liberation theology was born in Latin America and comes from a theology of the underside. And it's a perspective of the gospel, of the tradition of Christianity that is rooted at the core of standing with the poor, oppressed, and marginalized. And that is seen through and through, both from his ideas and his vision and his the words that he spoke, but also the priorities of who he gave attention to, where he went and visited. He always centered the poor, the marginalized, the oppressed. That impacted also his outspokenness, that liberation theology is not a quiet theology. This is a theological perspective that calls out injustice, that speaks up about economic inequality, about disparity, about the ways that those in power further marginalize and harm immigrants, refugees, those who are exploited and marginalized. And that was woven through and through in his papacy.
That's so interesting. I want to talk about the LGBTQ community because I know that also as a difference to people who came before him, he was kind of more accepting toward the community, but some members of that group can find it hard to consider him to be an ally because while he included some members of that community, he excluded others, such as trans people. Can you give us kind of a synopsis of his stances on the queer community and kind of, what his beliefs were in that regard.
Absolutely. So he brought hope for many people who have progressive views around LGBTQ equality. At the same time, caused a lot of frustration, and because while his actions were rooted in acceptance and loving and care and compassion, ultimately there weren't doctrinal changes or legal changes that would have impacted LGBTQ inclusion. But the most pivotal moment came for him when he was asked a question on a plane about LGBTQ people, and he said, "Who am I to decide?" And that was a striking moment of humility, when many people might think, well, you're the Pope, you're the one who gets to decide.
Right.
But he was stepping back from that place of judgment and moving to a place of humility. And so while he might not have changed the policy and the doctrine, he opened the door to seeing the person in front of you above a doctrine or a policy. And this was seen actually with trans sex workers during COVID-19. He went into Rome and served and supported trans sex workers to make sure that they had the food, the health care that they needed, to make sure that they got the COVID-19 vaccine, and then he invited them back to the Vatican. So while, yes, he did not go all the way that so many progressive advocates would like him to, he certainly held a different posture than has been seen before from the Catholic Church.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the legacy that you think he will have within the church, talking about his stance on queer rights and oppressed groups and immigration. How much do you think that's actually going to last within the church moving forward? Like, do you think the new pope might continue with his progressive streak, or do you think the church will kind of go back to more traditional means?
Well, I guess I would say I imagine that there will continue to be different factions and perspectives, because that has been the case within all of our religious traditions as well as within Catholicism from the beginning. There are different perspectives and experiences, power plays. I don't see that ending anytime soon. However, he did select a high number of the cardinals who are choosing the next pope. He chose about 80% of those who are that are making these decisions today. And he did institutionalize reform measures that focused on what he called the synod, which is the community of power and shifting power, less hierarchical and more community-based. So those systems will remain in place and would be more difficult to undo at this point. So I think that both the systems and the administrative way he approached the office, as well as his emphasis, he was an advocate for the environment, for immigrants and refugees, for interfaith relationships, for women not in ordination, but in administrative roles and in inclusion in decision-making processes. So I think that those legacies will carry on.
Good, I'm glad. I hope they do. Is there anything else that you think would be important to highlight about his life, what he's going to carry over, anything at all?
I think that more than anything, it was his commitment to the people in a time when we are seeing it globally moves toward the far right. We are seeing nationalist impulses, isolationist impulses. He pulled people back together. He notoriously called for building bridges more than walls. Mm-hmm. He worked to bring people together across difference. And in a time where both in the United States and globally, people are so siloed and factioned off, that is a message that we all need to remember.
Louder than ever, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Now starts the process of choosing the next pope. You're probably hearing the word conclave a lot right now. That's the name of the gathering where cardinals vote to select the next leader of the Catholic Church. Conclave means with key in Latin, a nod to when the cardinals would literally be locked in the Sistine Chapel until the next pope is selected. While that doesn't happen anymore, the process is still full of rituals that have roots all the way back to the Middle Ages. First, eligible cardinals gather in Vatican City for a special mass before heading to the Sistine Chapel. Once in the chapel, they all take a vow of secrecy. Now, each day, votes are cast up to 4 times, twice in the morning and twice in the afternoon. 3 scrutineers, chosen at random, review and tally the secret ballots after each vote. This continues until someone receives 2/3 of the vote. After each vote, smoke is used to signal the result. Black means no one has received the required 2/3. White means the cardinals have elected a new pope. The newly elected pope must accept the election and then immediately change into papal robes before stepping onto the balcony and delivering his first blessing. And in U.S. news, President Donald Trump has officially been in office for more than 100 days, focusing much of his second term on things like immigration crackdowns, tariff policies, and government spending reform. But recent polls show that most Americans are not happy with his performance so far. An NBC News poll found 55% of those surveyed disapproved of Trump's handling of his job. An ABC poll showed similar results, with 55% disapproving and 39% approving. A CNN poll had an even higher disapproval rate of 59%. For both the ABC and CNN polls, his 100-day job approval rating is the lowest any president has gotten in the past 80 years. And on the heels of his first 100 days, the Trump administration doubled down on its claim that the Maryland man who was deported by mistake to El Salvador is a member of the gang MS-13. They claim that the symbols tattooed on Garcia's fingers are proof he is a member. Gang experts have repeatedly said the tattoos alone are not proof of membership in the gang, but President Trump also acknowledged that he could return Garcia, but he refuses to do so. That's despite a Supreme Court ruling that the administration must facilitate his return. This comes after 4 House Democrats traveled to El Salvador to call attention to the deportation. And the Trump administration is facing sweeping lawsuits that allege the administration unlawfully stripped international students of their legal status. CNN reports more than 1,000 students and graduates have had their visas or statuses revoked amid a national crackdown on immigration. There are at least 2 federal suits filed in Georgia and New Hampshire, along with several individual cases. The ACLU is championing some of these cases, and they're asking a federal court to reinstate the legal status of the students they represent. And just days after the HHS said it would be creating an autism registry, the agency is rolling that back. On April 21st, the NIH director said the agency would be creating a, quote, real-world data platform full of private medical information from federal and commercial databases. He said that data would be used to develop national disease registries, including one for autism. But now, in statements to multiple outlets, including CBS, the HHS is saying that it isn't creating a registry, but the data platform will be used to research the causes of autism and help find better treatments. And anti-Semitic incidents reached an all-time high in Colorado last year, according to a new report from the Anti-Defamation League. The organization says that in 2024, there were 279 anti-Jewish incidents, 41% more than the year before. That puts Colorado 9th in the nation for most anti-Semitic incidents and 3rd for the greatest amount of white supremacist propaganda. And it is Mental Health Awareness Month. Since 1949, the month of May has been used as a time to actually talk about often ignored issues pertaining to mental health to reduce stigmas and improve overall wellness. Now, going to therapy is usually one of the first things people recommend to maintain your mental well-being, but with the rise of AI, many are turning to chatbots for advice they'd usually seek from professionals. I know I have. But what are the dangers of that? I had a chat with Dr. Cheryl Ziegler, a licensed clinical psychologist, about the pros and cons of this trend.
We can sometimes say one thing, but we look or feel or have a tone of another. And right now, there's no way that AI understands any of those real human qualities.
There's a few things that I think are commonly known that
quote unquote favor the use of AI as therapy when comparing it to traditional therapy, such as like affordability and the fact that you can get pretty much instant assistance. But I'd like to know what you think some of the benefits of using AI could be from a mental health professional's perspective.
Yeah, I think some of the things that people could get out of using AI is basically a sense of, hey, this cluster of symptoms or things that I'm feeling, what do you think about them? What should I do with them? Should I seek out treatment? What type of treatment should I seek out? I think you can ask it those kinds of questions. I think what's really important to understand is that whatever it suggests, you then want to run by an actual licensed professional. So if you look at like usually any language model, I'll just say ChatGPT, it usually says on the bottom, double check these answers. I can be wrong.
I think that some groups of people might feel more comfortable talking about their emotions and their fears and their insecurities when it's not to another human being, to another human face. Do you think that plays a part in the rise of using AI for therapy?
Without a doubt, it does. It's so much easier for people to, not have to look someone in the eye. So if we think about what a classic quintessential early therapy psychoanalysis looked like, it was someone laying on a couch with a therapist next to them or even behind them. There is something about eye contact. So absolutely, I think that it is much easier to put in even things that you would never even want to tell somebody, even if you weren't giving them eye contact.
Is there anything that concerns you about this trend of using AI for therapy?
I mean, I have major concerns about AI and the amount of information, even personal information that we're giving it. I'm concerned about privacy and security in that way. I'm then concerned about people not seeking appropriate treatment because they feel like, well, I'm engaged in something that feels good to me right now. And I can see that being the next dopamine hit. I can type anything in and I'm going to get an excellent answer. That is giving me a dopamine hit. So I think the third piece is that blurred line between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. I think if you interact with this, it doesn't even take that long. There really are some blurred lines, and it concerns me that people who are lonely or not connected well with others are then going to potentially get even more addicted to their screens and their AI as a way to fill up a very human need for connection.
Something that I've thought of that concerns me is that therapists are trained to look for warning signs that someone might be a danger to themselves or others and kind of take action. And AI can't do that.
There are behavioral health apps. So if you like this model of technology for the multitude of reasons, the ease, the cost, all those things, just use it to find a platform where it is trained, even if it's a bot, it is trained to look for some warning signs. There really are a lot of reasons why you should go see an actual person. I think that AI can be great for like something like I said, hey, I'm having a hard day today. What are 5 things that could help get me in a better mood? I think when it's really what we call episodic and acute, which means it's just happening today. It's just this moment. It's just a little blip, like, oh, that made me really mad, or I woke up in this mood. Maybe check it out, see what's there. But anything that goes on, honestly, past just a day or two, that's where you really do want to go see a licensed clinical professional.
Something that's really interesting from my personal experiences with AI and kind of some things that I've read online is that AI seems to quote unquote learn what you like and dislike and give you answers that don't necessarily challenge your beliefs and your perspectives. And I think that that's something that I've always valued about therapy. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that, like that human touch, that human aspect that's so important when it comes to going to therapy in real life.
So we as a society have gotten really accustomed now to trying to get our needs met, our very human needs met through technology. And what's the outcome? We're more anxious, more unhappy, more disconnected, and lonelier than ever. I want people to think of it as a tool, but it is not a replacement for real human contact, connection, actual therapy, somebody who will look at you, read your body language, or maybe even just look at you and say something like, it looks like you've lost weight. You look like you haven't been sleeping. It looks like you're more tearful than normal. You seem angry and irritable, right? We can sometimes say one thing, but we look or feel or have a tone of another. And right now, there's no way that AI understands any of those real human qualities. We are dealing right now with a computer and programming. So it is going to give us answers consistent with our interests, consistent with the things that we're asking it, what we're researching. And there's no way right now to say that it would ever say, well, that sounds like, a dangerous idea. Or have you ever thought about this completely other perspective? So there's I know it's being dubbed as this, a human language type of model, and it's very, very good. But when it comes to emotional behavioral kind of health, we're not even anywhere near what I would feel comfortable saying. Yes, rely on this more than you would another human being.
Now remember, if you or someone you know is struggling, there's always help available. Colorado Crisis Services has counselors available 24/7 if you need someone to talk to. Their number is on your screen, and you can also reach the National Suicide and Crisis Line by dialing 988. And we're nearing the 15-year anniversary of the legalization of same-sex marriage in the United States. This historic moment was a culmination of years of resilience and hard work by the LGBTQ community, which also paved the way for the milestones that came before it. Now, one of those milestones happened 12 years ago this month when same-sex couples in Colorado were finally granted civil unions. Photojournalist Tom Cole and I spoke with one Denver-based couple who fought to make that happen and were honored for that fight.
It's so special to us, this photo.
Inside Anna and Fran Simon's home, history hangs on the walls
Our marriage license, yeah.
and lives in the pages of their family scrapbooks.
So here's the civil union.
Photos that show different versions of a happily ever after they once thought would never happen.
I knew from the time I knew I was gay, which is pretty young, like, okay, so I'm not gonna get to be able to get married. We did the whole white dresses, rabbi, 100 friends, Denver Botanic Gardens, with all the things that we could have and not legal.
The rabbi said it was valid and binding. Normally they say it's legal and binding, but she wasn't able to say that.
The absence of legality marked the presence of uncertainty.
There were protections that we couldn't get any other way.
Yeah, and it was an emotional roller coaster, right? We had our wedding in 2005, and then in 2006, that's when Colorado voted down domestic partnerships and voted for a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage.
But in 2011, Colorado legislators introduced a bill to provide same-sex couples with civil unions.
We had the capacity to testify again and again and again in a way that a lot of people that are just normal people, not lobbyists or whatever, could do.
And it failed again and again and again.
But they kept throwing punches again
We felt like it was our responsibility
and again.
to fight for this.
We wanted that for our son, to have married parents.
So he actually testified with us the last time. We're so proud of him.
The bill finally passed in 2013, a historic moment for Colorado and them.
We were given the honor of being the first couple to receive a civil union in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, our wedding in 2005 was with our family and closest friends, and this felt like it was for everyone.
Yeah.
It was much bigger.
We had to wear dresses again. Who gets to do that? To marry the same person again?
And again, they made history in 2014 as the first gay couple to get legally married in Denver after Colorado's same-sex marriage ban was struck down. The following year, a Supreme Court ruling solidified marriage equality for everyone in the country.
I remember calling my parents right away. It was a huge moment.
Such a huge shift is only possible because of millions of people over generations slowly doing the work.
People like Anna and Fran.
I don't think we're legends of...
No.
People whose stories are told again and again.
Yeah, this was in the International Herald Tribune.
Be it out loud or between frames, so as to not forget their fight.
They have in the hall, in the county clerk's office, pictures of us from both our civil union and when we got our marriage license.
What does that symbolize to you?
Dignity, respect.
And the work of so many people, with us and certainly before us.
Now, those pictures are currently in storage while they renovate that wing and the clerk and recorder's office moves to a different building. The two of them highlighted the importance of history and recognizing the fight that they and others took part in, but also emphasized that many queer folks are having to continue to fight for their rights. Let's hop into our good news of the week. It's Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and Colorado is celebrating with food. Over 80 vendors are coming together for Mile High Asian Food Week to share their culture with customers, new and old, who are looking to expand their taste buds and learn about AA and HPI culture through a medium that everyone can understand: food. And Colorado's largest Cinco de Mayo festival returns for its 36th year at Civic Center Park in downtown Denver. Organizers say they expect more than 350,000 people to attend the weekend-long event. The festival will feature a parade, cultural dance and music performances, and local vendors. It's all part of a fundraising event to better aid Denver's underserved populations. And this is good news for everyone, but especially for our former host Jamol Simon, aka the biggest Beyoncé fan in the world. The highly anticipated Cowboy Carter tour has officially kicked off. Beyoncé performed the first of 32 shows in Los Angeles this week, one of the 9 cities she'll perform in for this tour. This is certainly a change from the Renaissance Tour's 40 stops. Now, historians say there's a reason for this, and it has all to do with the Chitlin Circuit and Black history. If you want to learn more about that, 9 News reporter Janelle Finch has a story all about it on our website. Thanks so much for joining this week's Culture Report. We'll be back to continue the conversation right here on 9 News Plus and on 9news.com.